G. Rose, and today we're going to be resuming our readings of Belonging Again II.1. We will be reading from Chapter 3 of Book 1, Section 2b, and we talked a bit about the need to prepare attention before the lacking and visible to avoid afflicting plans of the visible, which is alluding to Simone Weil and the distinction between AA self-enclosure and AB dialectical thinking. And we've talked about Lorenzo's work on neurodiversity, Simone Weil, the essential limits of pluralism, leaving Plato's cave, and so on and so forth. And today we're going to be talking about we must unplan our lives, which also there was a lovely parallax conversation with Fidel last that I would suggest where we talked about this distinction. So we will be reading from here, and we always appreciate you being here. So, to avoid affliction, we see a need for us to be subjects who can handle, give attention to, and face lack. That which we must then absolutely choose to be apathetic or mere nothing, which will eventually bring us to the work of Stanley Rosen, who Guy Senstock brought to my attention. But we cannot plan for lack, only be prepared for it. And this is for me to be different kinds of subjects than the kinds of subjects who we have been for most of history. This is for us to move from the neurotypical to the neurodiverse per se, which is for us to move from AA to AB, discourse to rhetoric. It is for us to become children, which is an allusion to Nietzsche. If much now rides on us figuring out how to spread the conditions in which people leave Plato's cave on their own, then what this means is we must move from a socioeconomic system focused on planning to one which is prepared. This is for us to take Ivan Illich seriously, as we will discuss, and it is for us to become antifragile and intrinsically motivated. November 2023, Michelle and I had the pleasure of teaching a course at Parallax titled Look at the Birds of the Air, which entertained a distinction between planned and prepared. The class claimed we needed to unplan our lives, which sounds strange, admittedly, but the notion is that we today are very dependent on plans and planning, and though that emphasis was perhaps acceptable for most of human history until now, 2023, as of when this was written, given the rise of artificial intelligence, the collapse of givens, the growth of complexity, pluralism, and the like, we must begin to shift our focus to being prepared for the unpredictable. And I would note here Luhmann's point that the more complex societies have become, the more they've actually lost control. It's kind of interesting because you would think that the more powerful and large societies become, the more control they'd get. But there's this interesting way in which now they're not in control. And thus preparation becomes very important. Again, following Hegel, this doesn't mean we were wrong to focus on planning like we did, but that we are now reaching an end to that historic episode and need to negate sublate it into a period where being prepared is more primary. We will, of course, still make plans and require them, but these plans will emerge out of a state of preparation versus us living as if planning and preparing are similes, as we've been able to do for most of history without great trouble. But things are shifting, and that shift would have us become more like Ivan Illich envisioned, which would furthermore have us align more with rhetoric than discourse. What's the difference between plan and prepare? To plan for something is to create a map and model by which to organize our action toward it. It is predictive and modelable. For example, I might plan to visit the beach next year and buy some tickets, make some reservations, and so on. Everything is mapped out, and I then know where I will be next year around June. It's predictable. Being prepared, however, is where I don't know what's going on to be happening in June, but regardless, I'm ready for it. If it's hot, I've trained myself to not be addicted to air conditioning. If food is short, I know how to grow my own garden. If everyone around me is going through hardship, I know how to de-escalate drama and be there as a friend. I'm prepared. Now, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with planning for a trip in June if in making plans I don't get in the habit of using my time in a manner that makes me less prepared. This is key. Planning must never replace preparing, but there is something about planning in being linear, predictable, and low order that tends to overreach and infringe upon preparing, dynamic, unpredictable, and high order, which trains us out of being prepared. After all, why do we need to be prepared if we have everything planned out? If we plan well, nothing bad will happen. It is natural to think of ourselves as prepared, not just dependent on plans, but that often just means we plan to be flexible. when our plans fail. To be prepared means to be able to handle the unexpected, which for Ivan Illich is more about skills and discernment, while being flexible often means we adjust plans. To be prepared to change plans is not what Illich is talking about, but this is a way by which we can hide from ourselves our lack of preparation. Furthermore, if we are disabled by the system, we can't be prepared or even really flexible, despite what we might think about ourselves. Preparation is deeper than flexibility, but identifying this difference is not something the system makes easy to do. And please note what Ivan Illich has to say on disablement, and I think we can understand our age today as a kind of mixture of Kafka and Illich. To resume reading, another factor which might contribute to the mistake of planning at the expense of preparing is the association of the quantifiable with more real, which is to say that a plan is more quantifiable than preparation and hence can come to be seen as more real, while preparing for something can be seen as irrational, paranoid, and unreal. This topic will be expanded on when we discuss the right to useful unemployment by Illich, but the point is that if we can't make money doing it or show our plan for it, it's often seen as fake, unreal, flaky, and unreliable. The society doesn't tend to care what we are prepared for, only what we plan for, and to its defense, there's a good reason society is like this. For decades and even centuries, society has been able to conflate plan and prepare without much consequence. But times have changed and will continue to change as complexity intensifies and the future becomes more foreign and alien. Increasingly, all we might be able to do is prepare for the future, not so much plan for it. If we plan for it, we'll likely plan to be wrong. Unfortunately, plans can bring with them a kind of Stockholm syndrome, where we refuse to acknowledge they were wrong. Nobody wants to be wrong, after all. And so we might keep trying to make them work, then try again, making little progress in the name of progress. Antifragile by Nassim Taleb is a book about preparation over planning, and a way to think about the distinction is the idea that we can't plan for when a rock is going to hit a window. It could happen today, tomorrow, a year from now, or never. However, we can design the window so that it can withstand being hit by a rock regardless when that might happen, and this would be for us to prepare the window. Similarly, we can't plan for what occurs as we approach the technological singularity, as Cadell discusses, say, in episode 60, O.G. Rose Conversation, but we can work to be prepared for it. But doing so will require us to work ourselves out of habits we've been trained into by school, the economy, and the system in general. Illich spoke of unquestioned assumptions and examined history to show all the assumptions we absorbed and lived according to without realizing it. And one of those unquestioned assumptions today is we must plan our lives. It's inevitable we plan, and plans are not inherently bad. But after years of being habituated by the system, discourse, it's far more likely we need to unplan our lives in order to bring it into a proper dialectic with preparation, thus benefiting rhetoric. At this point in history, it's more likely we plan to be dragged out of Plato's cave, but now something unexpected could occur, mainly that nobody comes. And so we might wait for our plan to come to fruition for a very long time. Cadell last has made the point that the dream of the scientific universe seen in thinkers like Newton was that we would be able to predict the universe like a fine-tuned clock. And to the degree an idea was predictable was to the degree it was scientific and hence most actual. But we have found that as we move from physics to chemistry to biology to mind, that the world became more unpredictable, which is to say unpredictability rises with complexity, which is a point Luhmann makes as well. Human subjects are extremely complex and unpredictable, and yet if we still associate predictability with most actual, that means we associate most real with that which is less human. To focus on planning and predictability, then, is to thus make humans toward life in a devolving and disabling way. And yet it is those who are toward life as such who can be considered most practical and actual. In the name of being ready for the future, then, we can make ourselves less able to enter the future as human beings. I have critiqued bestocentrism with Nietzsche, and we could say that plans can bestow on us direction, which is what we must now move beyond via negation sublation. Bestowing is inevitable in life, as is planning, but the trick is that we don't engage in bestocentrism or plan-centricism as a superior or moral way of life. This is when we can dehumanize and disable ourselves, a fate we can avoid by prioritizing preparation, but engaging in preparation can be seen by others as irrational, impractical, and silly. If engaging in preparation, though, is what is required for people to be children, this would suggest that the majority of people won't be, and if much rides on the spreading of childhood, then this is a problem. The macro conditions will have to change, but how can that occur without us engaging in force and totalitarianism, as arguably does Plato in the Republic? Not easily. Preparation is shadow work today, a concept which will be expanded on later in this book. And for Illich, shadow work is that work left in the shadows by wage labor, which is not even acknowledged as work. The only real work is that which receives a wage, even if the shadow work is what makes wage labor possible. There are strong social incentives and pressures not to engage in shadow work, but if that is precisely the work we must do to be prepared, and we really must be prepared to handle the future of the technological singularity, then this means there is social incentive to end up effaced and impoverished financially and spiritually. This is a massive problem, and quickly we need to cease incentivizing planning over preparation, discourse over rhetoric, AA over AB. It's another topic, but I think the moralization of plans is contributing to people not entering into marriage or having children, as the Collins discuss at base camp, precisely because people can't plan for the future, which makes them feel too anxious and inadequate to try to plan a life, as seems possible because of, say, birth control. Furthermore, if a society moralizes having a plan, then it basically becomes immoral to let those without plans get married. But as the world changes and a plan becomes increasingly useless, the anxiety of the situation might incentivize people to stress the need for plans more, creating a vicious cycle in which birth rates might plummet as isolation climbs. In response to my conversation with Cadell Last and Andrew Sweeney on Ivan Illich, Owen in the Agon, also known as Raymond K. Hessel, made the excellent point that as planning collapses, what also breaks down is the social contract, which makes the situation politically consequential and volatile. If we can't plan on retirement, social security, a job, what good then is society? Why should I pay taxes? Why should I bother to work? If the society leaves us disabled and then also makes us feel like it has broken its promises, the people will easily grow enraged and rebel against the ruling class. What then? Will the ruling class flee or squash the rebellion? It's hard to say, but Owen's insight suggests why the transition from a planned society to a prepared society will be difficult, a transition which probably can't be planned for itself. This too is something for which we need to be prepared. If all we know how to do is plan, if our plans fail, all we can do is make a new plan, then a new one. But why would we even bother trying if the first plan failed? We might find ourselves having to overcome a trauma and anxiety to create a new plan, which given rising complexity is likely to fail. Again, Mills, always a treat, sir. Thank you. And so, on and on, we might fall deeper into a cycle that causes us despair, only able to respond to that despair with that which makes it worse. The only hope is for us to do something different, to prepare versus plan. But after years of planning and habituating ourselves to what is typical AA, this is hard and unnatural. And we can think of the neurotypical, neuromentidivergent distinction here as well. In this way, we can see how we might associate planning with neurotypical and preparation with neurodivergence. And as we need something like neurodivergence to leave the game theory problem and rational impasse of Plato's cave, so we need neurodivergence to move beyond planning into preparation. To plan is more neurotypical, given how history has allowed planning to work for so long. To prepare is now more neurodivergent. We must unplan our lives to the degree we are dependent on plans, and they remove from us the incentive to perfect and master practices of preparation. Upcycle, good to see you. Thank you for coming by. Where there is preparation, there can be plans, but plans often replace preparation where they come first, as discourse can follow rhetoric, but doesn't tend to occur the other way around. We have been able for decades to plan away the real of Lacan, but now we must instead be prepared for the real. We cannot keep planning it away. Artificial intelligence will easily replace most wage labor, and if anything, as humans can plan for, AI will probably plan for better. We must prove prepared for what AI cannot do, which will orbit lack, the nihilism described by Rosen, and the apophatic, which is to say we must be ready to organize ourselves like hip-hop ciphers capable of magic, to say something vague, which I spoke to Sweeney about, episode 138, and also Thomas Wynne, episode 93. This is our challenge, but if we rise to it, AI might also prove a blessing. And Ivan Illich here would also associate disablement with the growth of institutions, which do our skills and abilities for us. And one of the reasons also we don't have to be prepared is because we just need to make plans for institutions to do things. And institutions certainly open up freedom. They're able to deal with social diversity, pluralism, create abstractions that have authority to bring people together. But in that very act can train us out of our ability to maintain a humanness, a preparedness, that would make us able to handle difference without relying on something external from us, like an institution, government, and politics. And that's the problem. As you get diversity, the temptation to outsource decisions, relations, categories to institutions grows and grows, just like Mary Douglas talks about, which I think is a very important book that we can put together with E.O. Wilson's the social conquering of the world, or whatever. To see that also, if we're in an age where institutions are failing, legitimization crisis, Habermas, one thinks of How to See Like a State by Carse, How to See Like a State, which is an important book, then preparation also has something to do with having one's own line of flight to avoid the logic of capture and capital that Deleuze talks about in Mikey with Nick Land, et cetera, so forth, that if we cannot do, then the only way we will avoid capture is to be chaotic. And the problem is with chaos like that is you're basically you're dealing with the problem of institutions by becoming legion, losing social connection, the middle of Bernard Juvenal, which in a way seems like a solution, but it's a kind of, one might say, a demonic trick. And that would be the cheap Deleuzianism that we want to be careful with, a kind of cheap lack of intelligibility that sure gives you your own line of flight, but at the sacrifice of social intelligibility. So that's a strategy, that's an address to the problems of belonging again, but it destroys community. And if there's something about community that's necessary for humans to be fully human, this will not work. So we have to negate, sublate the problem. To resume. Funny enough, what might prove our biggest threat is precisely what AI cannot do, that we cannot predict, precisely because AI will have easily trained us out of habits of being prepared and being so long habituated to AI solving all our problems. And again, as we talk about AI, since that's just an extension of the logic of institutions into capital, into artificial intelligence, this applies to anything external of the human being that does our thinking for us, per se. In this way, it might not be AI that directly proves our undoing, but the reality that AI has undone our humanity and made us unprepared for what AI cannot do, which we cannot predict. And what is it that AI won't do? Well, AI cannot give us a final singularity that we may subconsciously be seeking, for we might be subconsciously seeking to overcome lack, which is a dream to return to the womb or return to Eden. This is the self-effacing dream, which we seem bound by affliction toward, and it is a dream that rationality seems incapable of saving us from, stuck in a Nash equilibrium. In fact, all rationality seems to be in the business of is accelerating us deeper into this mistake, and that's autonomous rationality, enclosure thinking, seeking its own consistency at the expense of correspondence, lack versus creativity. Yes, Mills, very excellent. What we need is menti-divergence in childhood, for this would enable us to think what rationality would never have us think, the difference between, say, technological singularity, AA, and technological harmony, AB, which will then bring us to the work of Cadell Last's thoughts on cosmic evolutionary philosophy and a dialectical approach to technological singularity, which will be section 3A. For more Belonging Again II.1, you can find the book on Amazon. There's also a playlist that goes through the ideas. There's audio readings, etc., so forth. And all reviews, all purchases are greatly appreciated. You can also find our new short story collection, Under the Wing, which again, all purchases and reviews are greatly appreciated. And thank you so much for your time. And Upcycle and Mills, thank you so much for coming by. It's always a delight to see you. And all the best, everyone. Thank you so much. All the best.